Hello everybody and welcome back to the multiplayer project, where, as usual, I have slightly changed the scope of this episode. We're going to be adding neighbors, doing map smoothing, and we're going to need to model a few more tiles before we can really get into tile choosing, ramps, and water filling, which we're going to reserve for next episode. So the amount of code that we're actually going to do in this particular episode is quite small. We're actually not going to need tile set open. We are going to need tile open, I believe. Did I do anything in this? Yes, I did. One tiny little thing. When we do our add neighbor, we're not actually adding this neighbor to our list of neighbors, which is something that we'll need to do. We're not going to use that right now, but it'll be useful to have a little later on, and it's just something I forgot to do last episode. So neighbors.add tile. That's all we need to do in tile.cs. Excellent. Now, in map.cs, this is where we're going to do the bulk of our coding work for today, but we're not going to be doing very much in terms of coding work today. So, the generate map function is right down here, and we're going to need to, at this point, after we instantiate the tile, we're going to need to add in our neighbors. But we only want to add in our neighbors if we actually have created those so far, or if they are actually within the map. So we need to add neighbors for any tiles that have already been made, which should be I-1, j. Also, it should be I-1, j-1. Also, I-1, j plus 1 should be made at this point, and I, j minus 1. These are the tiles that should already be created by the time we're creating this. However, we'll also need to make sure those coordinates are valid, e.g., well, really, as in, we're not on the edge of the map. Okay. So that's pretty simple to do. If I is greater than or equal to 1, and I don't need a space here, if I is greater than or equal to 1, then we will call assign neighbor, and we will pass in map ij, and we will also pass in map I-1 and j. Excellent. Now, inside of this if statement, these are still going to be I-1s, so we're going to say if j is greater than or equal to 1 as well, then not packages, then we are going to have curly braces and say assign neighbor, and then we're going to pass in map ij. I don't know why I keep trying to put two p's in there, that's very strange. And map I-1 and j-1. Excellent. And of course, keep in mind that assign neighbor assigns that neighbor to us, but also us to that neighbor. And it also assigns the navigation neighbors at the same time. So next we will say if j is less than map size y-1, I think. We'll double check that in a moment. I'm pretty sure it's -1. We'll assign neighbor, and that will be map ij, as well as map this should not be parentheses, but rather square brackets, map I-1 and j plus 1. The reason we can get away with j plus 1 is because we do the entire j row before we go to the next I row. So as long as we're at I-1, or rather the I row and the j column, I suppose we could say. As long as we're at I-1, we can look at the next j. That's fine. Okay, so that's 3 of our neighbors, but there are 4 total that are created. So, outside of I greater than equal to 1, we need to do another if check here. If j is greater than or equal to 1, then we are simply going to assign neighbor, and that is going to be map ij, as well as map ij-1. Excellent, and that's just directly to the south. So that will assign all of our neighbors, and let's actually fire up the server and test this real quick. So we'll fire that up, And we'll hop into the client here, let that compile up. Hopefully there are no errors. There are no errors. Fantastic. We'll run this, and we'll just verify that all of our neighbors are being correctly assigned. I technically didn't check the edges when I tested this earlier, so we don't get any errors, so that's fine. So let's check over here. There should not be a neighbor to the west, and there is not, or to the northwest, or to the southwest. Perfect. There is no neighbor over there. In here, all of the neighbors are assigned, and if we click on the, say, east neighbor, you'll see that, hang on, the east neighbor here, yeah, that this is indeed the east neighbor. Fantastic. So we'll check down at the very first one here, and this one only has a north neighbor, an east neighbor, and a northeast neighbor, which is correct. We'll check over on this side now, and this has a north neighbor, it has a west neighbor, and a northwest neighbor. That's correct as well. We'll just check the other two corners quick. A south neighbor, it has a west neighbor, and a southwest neighbor. Ideal. And then over here, it should be pretty much the same thing where it has a south neighbor, an east neighbor, and a southeast neighbor. Perfect. But every other tile that is not on the edge should have full neighbors. And it looks like they do indeed. Wonderful. And they're all hooked up correctly. I did extensive checking of each direction to make sure that it was correct off camera. Wonderful. So there's our neighbors set up. And that was nice and easy. And now we're going to smooth out the map heights. So in our generate map heights here, we are going to simply do a quick call here. Let's see, this is our Voronoi sampling. Right before we return the map heights, we'll do a new function, smooth height. And we'll do map heights. Wonderful. Now this doesn't exist, so we will go ahead and do a quick action here and generate that method. There we go. We'll get rid of the the new not implemented exception because we're going to implement that right now. And this is a relatively simple function, but we're going to have to iterate quite a bit here. So we need to iterate through every tile and smooth it out. Excellent. For int, we need a parenthesis. For int I equals 0, I is less than map size x I++. For int j equals 0, j is less than map size y, j++. Excellent. Now we're going to need to check all neighbors of this tile and see which has the lowest height. Actually, it's not the lowest height anymore. I changed this to see which has the furthest height from our tile. Okay, we're going to need 3 integers for this. Int furthest height equals 0. We're going to need an int furthest distance equals int.min value. And then we're also going to do an int distance that we're not going to initialize at all. Excellent. And then we're going to iterate through all of the neighbors of this tile, which of course we don't have in the list because the tiles at this point haven't been spawned yet. This is just a 2D array of integers. So we need to do this manually. So we will do for int x equals, this is going to be mathf.max, and we're going to do I minus 1 and 0. Excellent. And so what that's going to do is that will, if we're at a position where I minus 1 is greater than 0, it will return I minus 1, otherwise it will return 0. So that'll just keep us within the bounds. So now we will say x is less than mathf.min. We're going to take the min value of I plus 1 and map size x. Wonderful. And then we're going to say x++. Okay, so this should, of course, not be a capital M. So that gets us our rows there, and now we'll do our columns. For int y equals, this is going to be basically the same thing. Mathf.max, this is going to be j minus 1 and 0. And then y is less than mathf.min, this is going to be j plus 1 and map size y. So once again, that just keeps it within the bounds, y++. Excellent. So now in here, we're going to do pretty much what we have done previously when we're checking for the lowest or the furthest or the most optimal. We've done this sort of thing a fair number of times. We're just going to say that our distance is equivalent to mathf.abs. We're going to take the absolute value of map heights x, y, and then we're going to subtract map heights I, j. And that gets us our distance. Now, if our distance is greater than furthest distance, then we will say furthest height is equivalent to map heights x, y, and furthest distance equals distance. Wonderful. Now, outside of those for loops, we will now check to see if we're more than one height step away from lowest height. Excellent. So if we take the absolute value of map heights ij, and we subtract off furthest height, not furthest distance. Although realistically, this should be equivalent to furthest distance, right? Yes, this should be equivalent to furthest distance. We don't need to do this call here. We can save ourselves an extremely tiny amount of time here by not doing this call. This is not much at all. But we can just say if furthest distance is greater than 1, then we know that we need to change this. So let's set our height to the lowest, or rather to the furthest height, plus or minus 1, based on whether we're higher or lower. Okay, so if map heights... how did I type a... Oh, I put in phi instead of if. If map heights ij is greater than furthest height, so if we're higher up, then we should set it to... We should set map heights ij equivalent to furthest height plus 1. Otherwise, we know that we're either equivalent to, in which case we're not going to be changing it because we're not further away, or we're lower. So it has to be lower here. And so we can say map heights ij is equivalent to furthest height minus 1. Excellent. And that'll smooth out the map. And that's all the coding that we're going to do today. We'll check to make sure this slight change that I just made is actually functional, but we'll fire up the server. And let's see if that smooths out our map so that we have some nice terraces where instead of just shooting up a whole bunch of steps, it will instead slowly climb up. Well, not really slowly, but it'll go up by 1 every tile. So that should be nice in theory. And we'll just go ahead and log in. And look at that. Nice and terraced. Wonderful. So everything is relatively smooth at this point, but it gives us some nice height variation. We can change the number of height levels if we want, but overall, this is nice. Of course, that's still happening. But first, let's work on actually choosing our tiles. But before we can work on choosing our tiles, and yes, I do want to fix this shadow distance issue. It's kind of extreme. But we're not getting to that just yet. That's a pretty low priority thing. We need to be thinking about what all tile shapes we need, right? Because we need to do a little bit more mesh work. So let's hop into our tile set here. There we go. And of course, we're going to need a few more things than just this. So let's think about what other things we are going to need. For right now, I'm going to move this over about 8. And we're going to duplicate this cliff base. Actually, no, we're going to start over. We're going to duplicate the tile base. and we're going to move this over 8, and then we're going to duplicate it again and move it over another 4. And I just realized screencast keys is not currently on. Let's go ahead and see about turning that on, if I can remember how I did this. Oh, it's this checkbox. That's right. In theory. Maybe? Maybe. Apparently that's not it. Okay, I've completely forgotten how I turned that on previously. I guess we'll disable screencast keys and re-enable? Uh-huh. Maybe we have to close the toolbar? Nope. I've completely forgotten how I did this. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, that's nice. Yeah, screencast keys seems to have decided not to work. Okay, well... Oh, now it's working. You know what? Whatever. I'll accept it. So we're just going to grab this here in face select mode, and then we are going to just extrude this up about 0.8. Wonderful. And that gets us this scenario. However, we don't actually want to make an additional cliff, right? We need to make a couple of things, specifically corners for our cliffs. You may have noticed that when we were doing our map generation, there are corners to those cliffs. So we're going to need some of those. We're going to have what I'm going to call an inside corner and an outside corner. So first, we're going to take just these 4 faces and extrude them up 0.8. Wonderful. And then we'll just go ahead and assign this here our dark gray material, which material mode is... I can never remember with these new icons. This one. Okay, so we'll add in another material slot here, and we'll do dark gray. There we go. Okay, so that's a rough inside corner. And then for the other one, we're going to want to do this, 0.8. Oops, I wanted to extrude that, 0.8. Wonderful. We'll grab all of these. We'll assign in a new material, and that is going to be gray dark. And we'll assign that. Fantastic. So now we're going to need to create some variations here with loop cutting. And of course, we just want to loop cut about like this. There we go. That's about the same number of cuts, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, that is the same number of cuts. Fantastic. So we will loop cut here and here. We don't need to loop cut anywhere else for this one. So we will simply create some nice variants here. Something kind of like this. I don't want it to be too extreme. I want to move this along the x-axis. There we go. Of course, we cannot move these. Although, now that I think about it, we need to change one more thing first, because these have that slight slope to them, right? So this is at a local position of 1.5, 0.5. Actually, we'll do this one. Negative 1.5, 0.5. And that's 0.4 on the y-axis. So this should move in 0.1. In fact, we should move this as well. 0.1. And then this should also move in on the x-axis, 0.1. Okay, we'll do the same thing here, where these should all move in. Actually, not these. These should move 0.1. And then this should move 0.1. Excellent. So that gets us just that little bit of slope there. And now we can properly start making these variations. Okay, so we'll just do something kind of like this. I don't want to go beyond any of these lines, but let's just bring this actually out this way a little bit. Because I want to have this be around here. And then we'll just bring this around like that or so. Okay, so that's our first variant. We'll duplicate that and move that 4. We'll duplicate it once more. We can make as many variants of these as we want, but I'm going to stick to 3 for right now. This one is going to come in around like this. And then maybe sit kind of like that. I don't want that moved like so. I want it to be in around like that. There we go. That'll be fine. And then we'll just do something kind of like that. So that's a fairly different shape. And you get to see my mute button. Wonderful. And then let's just have this one, say, jut out quite a lot, but I don't want it to jut out too much because we have to remember that there's nav points here. So let's then bring this inward, perhaps something like this, where it juts out on one side and then goes a bit concave on the other. Kind of like that. There. Well, actually, they kind of all go concave on this side. I kind of want this to go convex then. So then we would bring that out something like this. And then something kind of like that. Okay, so that's 3 relatively different looking cliff corners there. And we'll do the same thing with this one, although we have considerably less to work with here. So we'll just place it something like that. Make that be fairly concave, like so. Excellent. And then we'll move this out 4, and then we'll duplicate it and move it out an additional 4. Excellent. Okay, so we'll just make a couple of variations here. I want this to be even more concave. Something like that. We can't move this one though. Okay, so something like that, just a little bit more concave. I want this one to be quite a bit less concave. Something along the lines of that. Okay, so there's 3 variations for that. And then we're going to do the same thing with our shorelines. So let's just, for right now, duplicate our base again here. Let's move these guys over about 8. We'll duplicate our base and move this over 24. And then duplicate it again and move it over another 4. Excellent, because we need to make shorelines here. So, for our first shoreline, we're going to do basically the same thing. Move this up 0.8. Excellent. That is a little much, because we need to move this down by 1. If I recall correctly. Nope, we need to move it down by 0.8, so I'll just move it up by an additional 0.2. Excellent. We'll move this down by 0.8, and then we will do basically the same thing we did with the cliff, and we will just grab this and move it up by 0.8. Excellent. And so now we are going to do largely the same thing we did here. I want to check to see what the actual Y position here is. That's 0.5? Okay, perfect. So realistically, these 3 vertices can be moved down 0.8, and it will look more like that. Okay, that is perfectly fine. So at this point, we are, of course, going to need to put in the water. So we will go ahead and grab these vertices here and extrude those up. What height should this be at? This should be at a height of -0.2. We can do that. Fantastic. We should also attempt to subdivide these edges. So let's go ahead and subdivide. I always forget that it's not W anymore. Okay, we'll subdivide those, and these vertices should also be at a height of 0.2, but I want to move them along this line. So we need to have it be at about 0.2. What would 0.5 be? Actually, 0.5 is exactly what we want. Wonderful. So I moved it with pressing G twice. We're also going to need to extrude these two vertices up to that same 0.2. And that gets us our geometry that we need. Fantastic. So let's go ahead and put in a face there. We're also going to need to put in... Actually, we need a little more geometry here. We need to grab these two, extrude them down, and this should be at negative 0.8. Excellent. So we'll need a face over here. This one over here we need to extrude down 0.2. As well as these two, actually. Okay. And that gets us all of the vertices that we need, except these three need to be extruded down one more time, down to 0.8. Negative 0.8, not positive. Okay. There we go. And so we'll just make these faces. Wonderful. And we will get the actual materials assigned a little bit later. We'll need a face here. We'll need a face here. There we go. And we'll need a face right here. We'll also duplicate these vertices with Shift-D rather than extruding them, because I don't want there to be a connection here. We're just going to move this up to that same 0.2 level. Excellent. And we'll connect them there and there. And that's just so that we have this same grid pattern. So we can have a grid there, or rather a quad there, a quad there. We'll have a quad here. We will have, this will be a little bit challenging. We'll set that up in a moment. We'll have a quad here. We'll have a quad here. A quad here. Oops, did not get that last vertice. There we go. And this one would be not a quad. So we're going to have a triangle here, here, and here, just to make that work. Okay. So now we're pretty much ready to set up our materials. We're going to need 4 total materials, I believe. Yes, indeed. We're going to need a dark gray, we're going to need a tan, and we're going to need a water material. Excellent. So we will go ahead and select everything that will be in our water material, which will be these here. Excellent. We'll assign that to water, and I missed a couple. We'll grab these two as well, assign those to water, and then we'll select all of our water and hide it with, if I can hit the right button, with H. Excellent. Now everything over here, this is all essentially underground territory that we should theoretically never see, but I suppose it's possible that we could. And we're going to just assign that to gray. And then all of our beach over here, as well as this down here, all of our underwater bits, we will assign to tan. Excellent. And then we will go ahead and put in a loop cut. It does not want to loop cut down this. That makes me a little sad. That definitely makes me a little sad. Even if I do it right here, it won't want a loop cut. I guess we'll manually do this. So we will grab these edges, and we will subdivide that. Actually, it's going to need to go all the way down here. So we'll subdivide that. Excellent. This one should also be subdivided, which means that this face needs to go. And we are going to do something like this. Okay. We'll do the same thing over here. We'll just grab all of these faces, and we'll subdivide those. Excellent. And because I actually grabbed this face this time, it is completely fine. Okay, I kind of feel like I want to subdivide this as well. So let's do so. Let's get rid of this face here. And let's also get rid of this face. So we will delete this face. Excellent. And then we're going to set this up to where there's a dividing line straight down the middle like that. And that gives us 2 triangles, a quad there, and a quad there. It's better, to be sure. Okay. So we'll also go ahead and do tan there. And maybe just to keep this a little more straight, like keep this line in here, we should put it here, but I don't think that's strictly speaking necessary. Okay. So this over here should not be water. This over here should be set to tan. Excellent. Then I'll Alt-H to bring that water back. Fantastic. So of course there is currently no variations here. This is not in any way pretty. So we'll just come down here and grab this, and we will bring this up something kind of like that. Is this selected? No, it is not. And we'll just put a little bit of a notch in there, I think. Kind of like that. And then we'll grab this and make this a little bit convex. Excellent. So now if we put these directly together, you'll see it's seamless. Wonderful. So we'll duplicate that and move that back 4. We'll duplicate it again and move it back an additional 4. And we'll just create a couple of real quick variations here. So I'm going to go ahead and select the water. Nope, not that. I want to select just the water and hide that because that makes it quite a lot easier. Uh-huh. Oh, it's because I'm in edge select mode. I need to be in face select mode. There we go. That'll do the trick. We'll hop back into edge select, and we'll just put in a couple more of these variations. Kind of feel like maybe we select this entire area. Yeah, that'll do. And then we'll just move this out something kind of like this. Gives us just a slightly different shape. And then I will unhide the water. We'll select the water here as well in face select mode. There we go. And now we'll hop back into edge select. And let's just make this one a little bit more on the extreme side. So let's place this something like that. But this side actually goes a bit concave. Kind of like that. Juts out as a little bit of a peninsula. Okay, that'll do. So let's just remember to put that back there. Wonderful. And now we are going to need a couple more things. First off, we are going to need to do the same thing with this. So let's just go ahead and put a... I was going to put an edge cut in here, but I think we'll just grab like this and subdivide. There we go. That'll do. And we'll set that height at -0.2. No, we need to grab it and edge slide it along -0.5 this time. Okay, that'll do. We'll extrude this upward to 0.8. So actually this should be at -0.2 as well. There we go. Excellent. And then we'll need to grab basically all of these vertices out here. Like this. And then we'll extrude that down. That should be at -0.8 in terms of its height. This is not at the correct height. Yeah, we need to scale this. So we'll grab everything that's down here and we will scale that on the Z-axis to be at 0. I did not mean to grab these vertices, though. These vertices should not be selected. We'll scale that. There's still one over there. To 0. And then -0.8. Excellent. Okay, we'll put in a face there. And excellent. That should be reasonably fine. This one needs to extrude up, though, to negative 0.2. And we should get rid of this face. In fact, I think I had the wrong thing selected there. We may have a vertice double. Let's go ahead and do merge by distance. Yep, I did indeed have a double vertice there. Okay, that's fine. So we will simply put in this triangle. That does indeed need to be a triangle. And then we will extrude this vertice up to be about negative 0.2 on the z-axis. We'll make this be a full square of water. And then this would be a triangle. Then this would also be a triangle. Or rather, this would be a quad. And this would be a quad. Excellent. So now we can go ahead and assign in our materials. We'll have dark gray, we'll have tan, and we'll have water. Excellent. Let's go ahead and assign our water right now. There we go. And we will hide our water. I'm wondering what's going on with that vertice. Or rather, with that edge. I think that's an extra vertice. Apparently it is not. Uh-huh. Well, this does not need to have an edge here. We'll get rid of the edge anyway. We'll select the water and hide that, but in face select mode. There we go. And then we will go ahead and make all of this be tan. And then all of this, of course, will go to dark gray. Excellent. So that gives us our very basic corner here. Let's go ahead and hide this water again. And then let's duplicate this and move this up. Actually, let's not duplicate this yet, because I want to put a subdivision here. There we go. And we will get rid of these faces. And we'll put in a quad there. We'll put in a quad there. A triangle here. And a triangle here. These will, of course, need to be set to tan. There we go. I'm not super happy with the positioning of this, though. I want this vertex to be moved back to a local position of 0, 0. Okay, I'm slightly happier with that. But I feel like it should actually be like 0.25 and 0.25. Yes, that is the correct position for that vertex. Wonderful. Okay, we'll put in a loop cut over here, and of course, we'll just manually do it, since it apparently doesn't want to. There we go. And then we'll do the same thing over here. Subdivide that as well. Fantastic. Okay, so now we can create ourselves some variation here. And we'll just place this about here. This somewhere around here. We'll move this guy inward a little bit. And then this one can come in as well. And then this can just jut out a little bit, kind of like that. Creating kind of a little bay. We'll move that. And again, just duplicating that out so that we have the same number of variations. And maybe we should make another variation for our ramp, but it really doesn't matter. We don't need to have 3 variations for everything. We can have anywhere between 1 and infinite variations. Well, up to the list limit, whatever that is. Which is certainly tens of thousands, if not more. I'd have to look it up to see what the list limit is. So let's just work on these variations a little bit. I'm just going to move these a little like this. And then have it come out something like this. We just need to make sure that we don't have things like that happening with the clipping. Okay, that'll do. That's a little bit different. And then we'll have this one be pretty heavily water. We need to remember to leave enough space for our navigation points, though, to make some degree of sense. Although this is shallow water, so we should be fine to walk through shallow water. Okay, excellent. Now there's one more tile that we definitely need. This does not need any variance, and actually I'm going to put it over here. And we are going to move it over 4, and we are just going to duplicate it. Actually, no, we're going to extrude it upwards. And no, I changed my mind again. We are going to duplicate it, and we're going to move it up 0.8. This is just going to be a pure water tile. So these up here, these faces up here, can be assigned water. But this, instead of being green, is going to be tan. Excellent. And now we will just simply connect these edge loops here. I'm pretty sure bridge edge loops will work here. Yes. Of course, we don't want that to be sand, so we'll recolor that to be water. Excellent. So that gives us just water there, and we should probably remember to move this down 0.8 so that the water surface is at the same level as this. Excellent. Okay, I'm just checking our heights. All looks good. Fantastic. So we've got these tile variations in now, and we can make more, we can make it prettier, we can do pretty much whatever we want with these tile sets, as long as they remain the same size and the same continuity, I guess I would say. So that's kind of what we needed in order to be able to start populating our tiles. We may need a few more things, but for now, this will do. However, it's pretty much what we wanted to get done here, which was, of course, adding neighbors. That's done. Map smoothing. That's done. More tiles. That's done. So our next episode is going to be tile choosing, ramps, and water filling. I don't know if we'll get to all of that, but that is definitely what we're going to be working towards. And after that, well, we'll see. For right now, though, I'm going to go ahead and put a cut in here, and next episode, we will start making these maps actually look, in some way, like maps. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and I will see you all next time.